Hey guys, we're getting ready to push a new patch here, patch 1.1.9, and we're extremely excited about this patch. For the first time, you're going to have true linkage between your decks and your collection. And it's going to really help you build decks in a much easier fashion. So as you go to build decks, you're going to know exactly which cards are in your collection and not being used, which cards are in your collection but being used in other decks, and which cards are missing from your collection. So let's go ahead and get into the app. So the first thing you're going to notice is we have these little color bars now underneath the decks, and this is a indicator to show you kind of the status of that deck, how much of that deck is assembled. So a full green bar is a fully assembled deck, where a bar with different colors or not fully filled up is a partially assembled deck. So I'm going to click on this deck here, and that bar is going to load in. So as I open the deck, you see that bar now at the top. And that bar, again, is a status bar. So you can see the green portion is how many of these cards are assembled. And what we mean by assembled here is that the cards are physically in that deck. So to be assembled, you have to physically take the cards from wherever they are, say a binder or a storage box or a different deck, and then they're placed in that deck box. So that's what the green indicator means. So there's currently 48 assembled cards in this deck. The blue indicator is cards that are available. So those are cards that are in your collection and they're not being used by anything else. So they're just in a storage box or something, not being used. And then you have the orange indicator, which is a card that you own, but it's already being claimed in another deck, or it's already being used in another deck. And then finally you have the black portion, which is missing cards. So those are cards that your deck is trying to use, but you don't currently own in your collection. So if I expand these tabs here, you're going to see these colored dot indicators. And this is our way of indicating to you as the user what the status of these cards are. So if we look at this Haywire Might, it has one green dot. So the way to think about this is the number of dots is how many copies of that particular card this deck wants. So this Haywire Might just wants one copy, whereas the Basking Broodscales has 4 dots, so it's looking for 4 copies of Basking Broodscale. Additionally, you can look at the colors of the dots to determine the status of that particular card. So the green dot for Haywire Might says, hey, 1 copy of the card is required for this deck. The dot is green, that means it's already assembled into the deck. Next, if we look at the Basking Broodscale, it says requires 4 copies, 2 are assembled, 2 are available. So they're somewhere in my collection, they're not assembled into the deck. So if I tap the Basking Broodscale, it's going to take us to a new screen, and you can see at the top left is the same dot pattern. And I could add another copy of this card or subtract a copy of this card from the plus minus up here. I could do it from the previous screen. But the most important thing is if you tab into this Copies You Own tab, you're going to see all the copies of this particular card you own, and you're going to see where they're located. So in this instance, I see I have 5 total Basking Broodscales. Again, 2 are green dots. They're already assembled in this deck. You can see where it says deck Zamba Broodscales, indicating this deck location. And then you can see I have 1 copy in M1 location and 2 copies in B35 location. So I could easily grab my box. This is my B storage box, and I'm using chaotic storage. So I have all my different dividers in here, and I could easily go to section 35. So let me go to section 35 and pull this out. So and I could easily find the Basking Broodscales from here. So I could just search through this really quickly and say, all right, I got my 2 cards I'm looking for, my Basking Broodscales, and then I can go into the app, and I can now tell the app just by checking this box. I want to make sure I check the box for the one B35. I'm telling the app, I've just pulled those cards out of B35 and putting them into this deck. So what this dialog box is saying, pull this card into this deck, question mark. Yes, that's what I want to do. And it's saying the current location is at B35. Once I hit assemble, it's going to change this to the new location, deck Zamba Broodscale. And then it has this little warning, make sure you have pulled the card from its current location before you hit the assemble button. If you assemble before pulling it, the card may become lost. And this says this because if I didn't go pull the card physically out of its current storage location, I just hit assemble, the app is now going to think the card's in this deck box, and if I don't know where it's at anymore, because the app no longer knows where it's actually at because I didn't actually pull it, you're going to probably lose that card. So just make sure when you use this, you're actually pulling the card before you hit the assemble button. So I got the card pulled, I've hit assemble, and now it's going to update the screen. You can now see that there's 3 green dots, 1 blue dot. So I'm going to tap the other one that's currently in B35. I've pulled that one. I've pulled them both. So I can hit assemble, and boom. Now we've got our 4 basking brood scales in our deck. So I'm just going to go ahead and insert them in the deck box so that they're there. So that's an example of cards that are blue. So blue dots again being cards that are in my collection but not assembled into the deck physically. So there's that. So you can scroll through this list and you can see all the different cards that this deck wants in their assembly state. So here we have Kozilek's Command. So again, there's 4 copies of this card required for this deck. That's why there's 4 dots. 2 green dots mean there's 2 in here, and 2 blue dots means there's 2 somewhere else in my collection, right? So I can again tap this, go to the Copies You Own tab, and as soon as this loads, we can see I have 2 copies in the B10 bin. So I've already got my B box here. Let's go ahead and go to 10, grab those cards, and I can quickly rifle through these. And I very quickly found my Kozilek's Commands. I'm going to go ahead and put the Rusty's back in B10. And there we go. Pulled my 2 Kozilek's Commands out of B10. So all I have to do is tap B10, say assemble. I want to make sure I got the right ones. I do. B10 assemble. And then I'll go ahead and do the other one. So now we've got our 2 Kozilek's Commands assembled in this deck box. So let me go ahead and put them in there. So this is showing you kind of the 1 card at a time approach to assembling a deck. We also have an assemble deck tool, which will basically do this all at once. And I'll show you that as an example here shortly. So now we want to cover the orange indicator, the cards in other decks. So if I open this lands tab, you can see I'm going to find the one. So I have this Urza Saga, where the deck wants 4 Urza Sagas. There's 4 dots, 1 green, 1 orange, 2 black. So this means I own 2 Urza Sagas. I am missing 2, but one of the Urza Saga is an orange dot. That tells me it's being used in another deck. So I can see this being used in my Perforos deck. So I could go pull that out of a Perforos deck and move it over here. So if I wanted to, I could tap this dot. It's saying, hey, do you want to pull this into the deck from this other location, which happens to be this other deck? And I could say yes. I could go ahead and rifle through here, and I could find my Urza Saga. I could pull it. Again, you always want to pull the card before you hit the assemble button, so you never lose track of it. And then once I have it pulled, I can go ahead and assemble. It's going to pull it into this deck. I'm going to put it into the correct deck box, and there you go. We've pulled 1 card from another deck to this one. If you didn't want to cannibalize that other deck or pull it from the other deck, you would just leave it there and you'd see the orange dot and you would decide, you know, do I want to buy another copy of this card? Do I want to proxy it? Like, that's totally up to you. So there's that. So you can see basically just by this color dot method, you can see the status of all the cards that you want in this particular deck. So I'm missing a couple Besejus, I'm missing a Cavern of Souls, missing 2 Urza Sagas. So I know that I'm missing some cards for that deck. So what we've also added is there, if you tap the 3 dots at the top right, there's this Get Missing Cards button, and this allows you to create a CSV or just copy to clipboard those missing cards. So if you wanted to go buy those from somewhere, you could easily do that. Another nice feature we added was we added a new sorting feature, so you can also sort by assembled state now. So if you ever had a card shop and you wanted to figure out what decks or what cards you were missing for a deck, you could just search, pull up that deck, open the missing card slot. You can see these are the 5 cards I'm currently missing from the deck. So I'm going to go to another deck that's less assembled, and I want to show you kind of the assemble tool. So let's look at the Sunstar deck, who's not assembled at all. It's just in a theoretical state, or a deck building state before you physically collected any cards for it. And I could go ahead and go to the top right, tap the three dots and hit Assemble Deck. And what this is going to do is going to take us to the Assemble Deck tool. And it gives you an option before you go, and it says, do you want to include the sideboard cards in this process? And do you want to include basic lands in this process? I don't want to include either of those, so I'm just going to go ahead and click Continue. So what this has done is says you have 30 cards for this deck in the binder. So I could expand this binder, and I could see all these different cards that this deck wants. But you can see this method is basically grouping all of the cards you need to go pull into their current locations. And another thing that we've added this patch is storage location grouping. So before, all of your storage locations were just considered independent objects. But I have all these storage locations in this box B grouped together now. So I'll show you exactly how to do this in a moment. So now I could go pull, these cards from B11 really quickly. Like, it wants me to pull Ashnod's Altar from B11, right? So I could go pull it from B11. Actually, we can just do this right now, just to show kind of the status get updated. So I got my Ashnod's Altar from B11. Put the remainder of these cards back to that B11 section. So I pulled Ashnod's Altar here. So just like before, now I just check the box and saying, do you want to locate this to the new location? And I'm going to go ahead and hit Assemble since I've already got it pulled out. And now it's basically said Ashnod's Altar is now in this deck. It's got this green checkbox. So if I back out of here, you can now see there's one card in the assemble state, and it's this Ashnod's Altar. So I could go back to the assembly process. I could skip this, the sideboard and the basics, and then I could go through here and do the entire deck. And the nice part about this is it's saving your progress every time you hit one of these check marks. So you don't have to do this all at once. If you get interrupted while you're doing it, it's totally fine. You can resume this process whenever you want. It's just a very quick and easy process for you to build decks. So we're really excited about this new deck building tool. We think it's really going to help you guys. The other thing is, like, if you ever want to disassemble a deck, you can just go ahead and go into the deck and hit Disassemble Deck, and it's going to ask you, all right, fine, you want to disassemble this deck, where are you going to put those cards? So I can go ahead and hit that, and I could say, I'm just going to take this entire deck and put it into slot B40. I could put it wherever I want, but we just need to tell the app where it's going. And then the same thing, if I ever went into here and I say select this Cavern of Souls, and I go to this Copies You Own tab, I could uncheck this, and it's going to ask me where are you going to put this card. Because we always need to keep track of where the cards are going, right? Or else the app's going to get desynced from your collection. We don't want that. We want everything synced up nicely. So I'm just going to cancel out of here, and it will stay in this deck. So if we go back, let's talk about the card grouping really quick. So if we go to the Cards tab and we hit View Collection, we now have the ability to group these storage locations together. So the way to do that is you need to go to one of the categories at the bottom, so boxes, binders, decks, or other, and you can now see that there's this selection button at the top right. So if I wanted to, I could hit this square icon at the top, which is the selection icon, and now it's going to let me cluster any of these together. So for example, I could select 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and I could just say group these. And now it's going to ask me, how do you want to group these? So if I wanted to group these, let's just do a demo here. I'll say by year, and then I'll hit create. Now it's going to create this group, which is year, and you can see it at the top left here, and it has its type box. It has 5 different storage locations in it and 662 total cards. So if I hit the 3 dots on that, I can edit that, and I can change the name. I can set the trade status. I can ungroup that if I want, or if I just tap this, I can search that particular group, or I can open that group, so then I can see the different locations in that group, and I can then remove it from group or use the similar features that you guys have seen before. So that's how grouping is working. We think grouping is really nice. It's a big improvement to the app. So now you can group all of your different storage locations together however you see fit. They do have to be the same type. So we're not allowing you to group binders with boxes, for example, for now. And the other cool thing about this now is if you have groups, you can actually search for groups. So we have locations or groups. So I have all my cards in this big box of 41 different locations grouped together into B. So if I search this, it's going to return every card in this box, even though they're in 41 different distinct locations. So if I just scroll and find one, I'm like, all right, where is this Absorbing Man? I can go to my collection tab, say, oh, it's in bin B38. So it's right there. So that's the kind of the high level of the grouping, a feature that's really important to us. So that's the gist of this patch. We've also added iOS notifications to this patch for trades, and these grouping features also work in any kind of trade search. So hopefully you've seen trades. If not, I'll create a different video here in the near future to explain trades itself. So that's just a high-level demo on the new deck builder that's coming in 1.19. I'm going to do a more extensive video on that in the near future, but I just want to give a preview of that. Thank you.